Hello, I'm Denver Henderson, Programming Manager of the Williams County Public Library, with a special Halloween edition of Oddly Peculiar. In the late 19th century, one of the more flourishing businesses in Bryan was Halm Brewery, ran by Jacob Halm, a German immigrant. Now, Jacob owned property outside of town, and on that property was a cellar. And in that cellar, he would store kegs of beer, saving it, aging it. However, later on, there became a ghost story after Halm's death, that Jacob haunted the cellar. But we have to ask ourselves, where is Beer Cellar Hill? One of the prime locations is right behind me at the fire department training station. It is that hill right there. However, there's a second contender, and you'll see that shortly. And the second hill that's in contention is behind me by the electric substation. Now, which hill is really Beer Cellar Hill? And is it really haunted? The story of Beer Cellar Hill begins with Jacob Halm. Born in 1834 in Germany, he immigrated to the United States and ended up in Bryan, where he founded one of the most successful businesses in early Bryan's history, the Halm Brewery. It was located at the corner of Beach and Center Street, and he built an elegant wood frame house catty-corner from his brewery that still exists. The brewery still exists also, but it's two separate buildings on the corner of Beach and Center. Jacob was a very successful brewer, and he owned property all over the town, but he also owned property outside of town, and that is where they believe that Beer Cellar Hill was located. Now, Jacob would store beer there, and he would go out to inspect it. And from a letter of his granddaughters, he would say, "I store it for 1 year, the second year is good, the third year I sell to my customers. 1, 2, 3. Remember that phrase, 1, 2, 3. Jacob met a rather tragic end in 1883. While inspecting some equipment in his brewery, he was snatched by some machinery which mutilated his body and dropped him 30 feet to the floor of the brewery. He was carried across the street to his home, where he died March 7, 1883, and is buried in Fountain Grove Cemetery. Interesting side note. It was because of Jacob Halm that the old burial ground near the intersection of Portland and Center Street was moved to its current location and became Fountain Grove Cemetery. He was afraid that the proximity of all those dead bodies may contaminate his water supply. Now, the ghost story. Shortly after Halm's death, people started to believe that near the site of his old cellar, they could hear him moving kegs and saying, 1, 2, 3. This legend, this ghost story, has been around for almost a century now. It was told to generations of school children, and adults and school children alike would go out and try to hear Jacob under his breath say, 1, 2, 3. Of course, as I said at the beginning, there are two prime suspects for where this was located. The cellar is long gone, and it lives in legend only. But I ask you, the fact that we can't find it, the fact that the railroad tracks behind it sometimes has the sounds of 1, 2, 3, and the fact that generations of Bryanites believe that a German brewer still haunts the town, I find all of that oddly peculiar. If you are interested in more information on Jacob Halm and the Halm Brewery, local history manager Jared Schnee will be presenting a program November 22nd at 6 p.m. discussing this fascinating topic. For the Williams County Public Library, I'm Denver Henderson.